Today I'll be reviewing Batman Year One, and I know a lot of people have already talked about this and done their reviews, but because I just started reading comics or DC comics, I'm actually trying to read Batman in somewhat a chronological order, and I thought this would be a good place to start and keep track of everything. And also, I feel like there's some things that people say about this story that are still kind of wrong, or I don't really understand too much, that I did want to talk about. We'll get into right now because I do hear a lot of people call this story a Jim Gordon origin story. And I get why people would say that, but some people take it serious. And I don't really see it as a Jim Gordon origin story. And I feel like that is just such an oversimplification of what happens in this comic because Jim Gordon's origin is much more than just his own. Because through his like perspective you get to see what Gotham is like, what the Gotham PD is also like, and how Batman and even himself have an influence on the city over this year as they both continue their rise through the ranks because Gordon isn't a commissioner. He just joins the force in this one. And I was actually kind of surprised by seeing so much of Gordon in this because I really didn't know much about him before any of this. But the part I wanted to show is the part that completely shows off what I'm talking about. It's a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Because earlier in the story, we learned that Gordon has good press, is what they talk about. He has good media presence. And here we get to see an example of them reporting on what he's done. And he's actually taking out big names in the drug world. And they're talking about this guy right here. And through this story, we learn that Harvey Dent's the one who actually bailed him out. And when Gordon questions him, he just asks him if he wants an umbrella. And then Batman shows up. And Batman ends up interrogating him. And he actually scares him so much that he voluntarily shows back up to the police station and turns everyone in. And that's what I mean about uh, how Gordon's origin is much more than his own, and how his and Batman's stories are very intertwined with each other. And throughout this story, you see why they actually both need each other to to save the city because it really is messed up. You do see some of Selina in here, and I actually really like the stuff with Selina. It made me interested in her own story because she actually has a DC comeback. I think it's her origin. I'm not sure if her some of her origin from this story was retconned a bit. I heard a little bit of this story was, but the core of it is still the same. This is like the basis of what everyone uses. And I also wanted to talk about the artwork as well. So go back here. Here's Bruce breaking. What's he breaking here? Let's see real quick. Looks like a top part of a chimney, but it's a huge brick. And then he kicks a tree in half and another tree. I just think it's insane that Bruce is this strong for a human. But anyways, I really want to talk about the artwork, as I really like it. At first, it could be a little jarring at first, but I think it lends really well to the city of Gotham. I think it's a great way to tell what kind of state the city is in overall and to see what it's like in the beginning. And I'm not sure if it's just me, but like everything looks very dark and bleak at the beginning. But in these shots with Selina, everything's clear. So I'm not sure if that's intentional, if I'm just reading into it too much. But I feel like as the backdrop becomes more clear, you can see the positive effect that Batman and Gordon are having on the city. And this is probably one of the best origin stories I've ever read so far because I wasn't expecting Gordon and Selina, and there's so much internal monologue in here. And that's another thing I wanted to bring up because there's a lot of cursive in here. Yeah, I just want to get a good shot of it because there's a bunch. But I noticed that the cursive only shows up for Bruce. The cursive is actually Bruce. Oh, let me go this way. The cursive is actually Bruce's inner thoughts, his real inner thoughts, and it's a lot more messier than I was expecting. I kind of like it though. I was expecting like a really refined way of speaking, but he speaks in short sentences, sometimes not even complete sentences in his inner monologue, which I found really interesting. It kind of shows how new he is to all this and where his priorities are and how fast he, even though it is kind of sloppy, it is quick thinking and he does come to solutions very fast. Although he is making a lot of mistakes at the beginning, which I really enjoyed this. It was a different, for me it was really, it caught me off guard seeing Bruce and Batman like this, like kind of unsure, always messing up and making the situation worse. And like I said, it's kind of refreshing to see him that he didn't just start as an amazing, incredible detective. He had a lot of mistakes along the way, and that's kind of why I decided out of all the characters that Batman would be the one that I would try to read in a chronological order. Even though there's not really one, if you wanted to follow a path, you could. And the next two, because people always recommend you read The Long Halloween right after this, but there's actually two other series I'm going to read before that. And I think that would be interesting to talk about because I don't see anyone really talk about them or mention them too much. But like I was saying, this is probably the best origin story I've read so far in DC. I think I'm actually going to give it a 9 out of 10 and put it in A tier, the same as All Star Superman. I was teetering on a B or an A or an 8 out of 10, but I think it deserves the 9 and the 8 or to be an A tier. I really did enjoy it. Like I said, I'm not sure if Selena's stuff gets retconned because of what her occupation used to be, because I haven't really heard it mentioned at all. But we'll see. I want to read her own DC Compact because I think that might be her new origin or something. Not too sure. Or it could be not changed at all. But anyways, that's the quick review of it. That's and I gotta say I really do enjoy it. This set a pretty good standard for what I like in an origin story. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all on the next one.